Again, good morning, welcome. Let me recap what we've been doing so far in User's Guide to the Soul. We're learning about how to generate joy in any situation. And we've gone through and learned a chapter about loving another Jew like ourselves, which is the heart of the Tanya. Now we're back to the main topic of this section, which is generating joy. And we're now moving to another level. We're going to jump up to create joy that has no connection to anything in the world and no connection to my ego in any way. Because as we've learned, if my joy or my love is connected to a condition, it'll be limited by that condition. So if I'm happy because I love chocolate and God made chocolate, so I'm loving God and I feel close to God because there's chocolate in the world, well, what happens when there's a pandemic and I can't get the chocolate that I like because it's not being shipped from wherever? Now, am I going to love God less or be less happy? Perhaps. So this chapter lets us leap to a new level where our joy is not connected to anything in the world whatsoever. And as we learned, the meditation is to focus our mind while we're doing the meditation we've learned, the long, short path, focus our mind on the concept or the principle that the whole world is nullified in God's presence. The whole world is nullified in God's presence. So there's this one infinite being, and just like before the world was created, there was only that infinite being. The same is true now. So there's no point being happy about anything in the world or loving God because of anything in the world, because all of it is gone. Even my own physical body and animal soul, it's all just nullified before God. And if I can change my perspective, now my joy goes from a state where here, I know God's there. I'm focusing on the Shema. I'm meditating, elevating my soul. I open my eyes, and now it's the world again, right? And now I'm having to love God through the world. And now I'm meditating on the Shema, and God's here. I open my eyes, and God's not here. What does chapter 33 tell us? Now God's here. Open your eyes. Same thing. God's still here. So the whole world, is completely nullified, and we'll go into a very specific example to show us exactly how non-existent the world is. But if I can shift my focus and my perspective to recognizing that this is just an interaction with one infinite being, nothing else is here, now the joy of always being very close to that one being can be very intense and does not depend on anything, not on a relationship with a person, not on a relationship with a pleasure in the world, not on a relationship with my ego. It's sustained joy all the time, no matter the scenario. So it's a big leap up. It's a very maybe unusual description of how to create joy, because it's not our instinct. Our instinct is to be happy when the world is good, when I enjoy things. So we're now working against our natural instincts to leap up and generate joy at a higher level. So let's go back into the text. We're going to start bottom of page 443. V'gam ata ken hu levado, bli shum shinui klal, mipnei shekol hanivraim betelim etzlo b'mtziut mamash.
The same is true now. He is one alone, without any change whatsoever. For in relation to him, the very existence of all created beings is utterly nullified, so that from his perspective, as it were, everything remains just as it was prior to creation.
So this is perhaps a step beyond the Shema meditation, where we recognize that the world is one, every soul is one. Now we're not just one, now we're not even there. Now the whole world is not there. And this is something we can create a thought pattern. We know now that neuroplasticity works every time we have a thought pattern. And every time I sit and I focus on this meditation that really the whole world is nullified, including my ego and my body, I change my perspective and I get closer to this state of being able to generate intense joy because I'm with God all the time. Yeah, so it's not a matter of loving Hashem more, we're loving Hashem differently, right? We're not loving Hashem because we have a big bank account or a wonderful dessert in front of us. We're loving Hashem because of God's self. Because God's an infinite being always with us. That's why we love God. Nothing to do with any of this non-existent world, so to speak. And to answer your question, Dan, that you asked earlier, if the world is just a figment of God's imagination, what does that mean? right? Which someone may be asking on YouTube or Facebook. Remember that we're talking about an infinite being. So when I have an imagined world, I can imagine a story and boom, there it is. It's a figment of my imagination and it's just an image. It's not real. When God, an infinite being, imagines a world or speaks a world into creation, because God is infinite, now that world becomes actual reality. So for us, the world is real. We're not saying that you can dispense with the world and not have to help people and not have to watch out for your health and all that. Look both ways when you cross the street. However, from the perspective of our relationship with God and generating love, we want to flip the switch and have God's perspective, where we recognize really the whole world is nullified. And even while I'm crossing that street, it's all God right here. Same as when my eyes are closed or I'm in a sensory deprivation tank or whatever. Kivitul otiot hadibur, hamachashava im koran v'shorshan hu mahut hanefesh v'atzmuta shein eser b'chinoteha chokma bina vadat chulu.
All created beings are nullified before God, just as the letters of speech and thought are nullified within their source and root. The soul's substance and essence, meaning its 10 faculties, chokma, b'nai, dot, and the midot.
Good. So we're not gonna go deep into the structure of the soul. This was chapter 3, right? And also we have a whole series for anyone watching, Intro to Kabbalah, that follows and describes all of these sfirot or potentials in our soul. But the mashal that Alter Rebbe is giving is that the whole world is nullified, just like anything that I say, so the letters that make up my speech, or anything that I think, the letters, so to speak, that make up my thought, they are nullified in my soul's potential to have any intellectual insight that would turn into thought or speech. So to make it more concrete, like we said last week, after this class, every one of us is going to speak to someone at some point or think something at some point. What that will be, I'm not sure any of us knows. Yeah? But we will. And where is that word now? Is it non-existent? Or is it hidden within me? It's in my potential. The potential to say the next thing I'm going to say after this class, it exists within me. But really, does it exist? I mean, come on, it's buried in my emotions that will drive it, in my intellect that will come up with it. And hidden within me, just part of me, is the potential for the next word that I'm going to say. Yeah? That's how hidden the whole world is within God. And even more so, but that's probably a good example that the Alter Rebbe is giving us to recognize, and not just recognize intellectually, but meditate on and have this become my perception, that the same way one word that I say, before I said it, was hidden within me and basically non-existent, just part of me, the whole world all the time is that nullified within God's light and God's power. That if I can picture the amount of non-existence a word I'll say this afternoon has now, that's the state of the world all the time, hidden within God. That's the true reality. And the world has no more reality other than that. Its only reality is how it exists within God. So this is it's a good meditation. If you sit for 10 minutes a day and you clear your mind and you breathe and you insert this meditation into your mind, that's how non-existent the world is, and you make that connection, you'll find over the weeks and the months, your perception shifts so that you're not so far from God while you're in the world. And eventually, maybe there's a click and now you can generate this joy. Whatever's going on, you're anchored in that reality that all this is just an interface with God. There's nothing else here. And you can be happy, intensely happy being with God. Going on, שאין בהם בחינת אותיות עדיין קודם שמתלבשות בלבוש המחשבה כמו שנתבאר בפרקים כ' וכ"א בעריכות עין שם.
In which there are no letters as yet, prior to their being clothed in the garment of thought, has been explained at length in chapters 20 and 21. See there.
Right, so we've gone to this before, and we also went into it in Shari Yichud V'Emunah for those who were with us for that text. But let's just explain what we're talking about. What does letters mean in Kabbalah and Chassidus? Letters means any form of expression. So whenever there's something that actually expresses, not just that has potential, but that actually expresses, that comes out in the form of letters. And you can have letters of thought and letters of speech. And if you think about it in terms of our experience, it's pretty intuitive, right? When I speak, I'm using letters. I mean, I could just go, right? But usually when I'm speaking a language, there's letters there. So that we get as letters of speech, and it forms sounds in my mouth, and it creates meaning and expresses. When we think, often we think in thought in letters as well, right? We think in English, oh, what am I going to have for breakfast, right? And the thought appears with the actual letters. So there's letters in thought that help the capacity for thought express itself concretely in thought. And often, you know, action will be driven by speech. Oh, should we go to the restaurant? Yes, let's go to the restaurant. Then we go, right? Speech is driven by thought. I'm hungry. Maybe I should go to the restaurant. Hey, honey, do you want to go to the restaurant? And now off we go, right? So thought drives speech, drives action. But what drives thought? As we know, the next level up is emotion. My midot, my 7 or 6, however you want to count them, potentials for having love, strength, compassion, etc., that determines what I think about. Because what I care about, my mind goes there. And let me ask you this. Everybody who's here, raise your hand if you identify that you think with letters, like you often speak in your mind. Let me see if that's true on my... Yeah, do most people do that? I'm the only one, just a few of us? No, Joe, you don't think in language in your mind?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, when you put it that way, language is words and words are letters. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So there's like a voice in my mind, hopefully my voice, and it often when I think there's someone talking there, or maybe you see the letters, but most of us think, I think, in terms of our native tongue, right? And so you know, that's pretty universal. But let me ask you this. When you feel a feeling, does that feeling express itself with any actual formal language? When's the last time you felt a feeling and there were letters there and the feeling was going and talking, right? The feeling, the place in our consciousness where feeling is, that has no letters. It's above where letters start, so to speak. So the feeling of fear or love or desire, whatever it is, let's leave desire out, feeling of fear or love, that drives thought to start activating and create letters, and that creates letters of speech. So in consciousness, speech has letters, thought has letters, but then above that, emotion does not have letters. And then, of course, what drives emotion, as we said, awareness drives emotion. If I don't know about something, I'm not going to get excited, or I'm not going to be worried about it, right? Out of sight, out of mind, out of emotion. So intellect is one level higher. And again, intellect itself does not have letters. It's only the thought that has letters. Once intellect has sparked, gone through Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, created emotion, also no letters. Emotion flows, now directs the mind to actually physically think. That's where letters start to occur. So how hidden, as we learned before, how hidden is that one word of speech when it's still not even in my letters of thought, not even in my power emotion, and not even in my intellect yet. It hasn't occurred to me yet, but it's within my soul, the potential is, but how non-existent and how hidden is it when it's above even the level of letters or emotion and intellect, and it's just hidden in my potential for intellect? That's really pretty non-existent, right? Would you agree? So this is an excellent meditation, again, to focus the mind on and fill the mind up, that's how non-existent the world is. Like one word that I'll say tomorrow is now hidden in my potential for intellect. Any thoughts on that? Is that, I could turn off the recording, you guys could start chatting again, let me know. But do you find, is that a helpful meditation in terms of your practice, your experience?
Well, yeah, it's very helpful, but I also, the couple lines before were helpful to me, because if we understand in the joy of what we do, and everything we do can be a mitzvah, and we're a messenger from God, and the joy of understanding that and living that is you know, that was just going through my head. Sorry.
Yeah. Of course, that's you know, that all is layered under, but this is like a new angle, a new meditation. So all
Right.
these are all, you know, things we can choose from to work on ourselves and learn how to create our own joy. Yes, Indy?
But if seichel is supposed to rule, if emotion, if you need emotion for thoughts, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said. That was like the hierarchy.
Yeah.
But it's the mind that's supposed to rule the emotion.
Yeah.
Then how do you balance those?
Yeah, good question. And often people, you know, it's counterintuitive because we equate thought with mind, right? We equate thought with Chabad, with Chokhmah Bin and Dad. Chokhmah Bin and Dad are not physical thought. That's not the physical brain thinking. And you know, before I was a soul in this body, my soul still had the potential for Chokhmah Bin and Dad. It just didn't have a physical brain to think physical thoughts. So you can picture the intellect that rules the emotions. That is the soul's capacity to have any intellectual focus or development. And that's all before the brain starts physically thinking. That's the soul itself. That creates an emotional flow also within the soul. Now it's a little more complicated. You know, when does it enter the heart? What's a physical emotion? That's a little more complicated. But the intellect is all before that. And then physical thought in the brain with letters of thought, that's not the mind controlling the heart. That's now already driven by the emotions. So when I'm using my mind to control my heart, as we learned in the early chapters, that's actually Chokhmah Bin and Dat, and directing what insights I have, what's important to me, how I form my intellectual process, how I develop it, and how I connect it to my soul's power of emotion. And none of that, all that happens often in the blink of an eye before any physical thought happens. Does that answer your question? Yeah. That's why the meditative process is so important, because we want to slow that down. We want to distinguish between my physical thoughts, the emotional power that drives them, and the intellectual potential that directs that. And you can slow it down. You can learn to articulate each one separately, and then you can start to direct emotions more effectively. If I think my physical thoughts, I'm going to just use those to change my emotions. I'm not recognizing that it's already driven by emotions. So yeah, that's confusing. Is that clear to everybody? Good question. Okay, we're back. Now we come to another mashal. So not the mashal, not the example of a word hidden within my potential, but the mashal of a ray hidden within the sun. It's also is an example the Alter Rebbe brings up frequently. וכמו שנתבאר גם כן במקום אחר משל גשמי לזה, מעניין ביטול זיו ואור השמש במקורו הוא גוף כדור השמש שברקיע. I think we're at Susan.
Elsewhere, this idea is further illustrated by an analogy from a physical phenomenon, the nullification of the sun's radiance and light within its source, the celestial orb of the sun.
So this is another beautiful image to meditate on. It's you know, lovely to conjure up in the mind. Of course, you know, we enjoy the sun, so you can have it be bigger and bigger and brighter and more alive and moving, and you can feel the heat of it. And then picture how existent are the rays of the sun within the actual ball of the sun itself. Right, so what reality does a sun ray have before it's left the sun while it's in the sun? Right, so there's rays coming through my window, and those I can point to and say that's a sun ray. But if I'm actually right in the sun, can I point and say, oh, there's a sun ray? Of course not. It's just the sun. I'm in the sun. I'm pointing at the sun. It's sun. And within it, even though the rays are even more intense there than they would be here, much more intense, still you could say they don't have any reality. There's no such thing as the sun and its rays when you're in the sun. And so the same way, the world is just like a ray from its source. And yet, unlike the sun, the ray never travels outside the source. God is here, God is tomorrow, God is yesterday, God is everywhere. So there's no such thing as a place outside God's place. And so unlike the mashal, the sun is everywhere. There's no outside for there to be a ray that exists. But if we can focus that the world has no more reality than a ray of the sun within the sun, that again, once we lay that down in our intellectual patterns, that can really change how we perceive things. שגם שם מאיר ומתפשט ודאי זיוו באורו וביתר שאת מהתפשטותו והארתו בחלל העולם אלא ששם הוא בטל במציאות במקומו וכאילו אינו במציאות כלל. Oh, you just muted yourself, Joey.
For surely,
I thought it was Dan.
no, I think, yeah, I'm up.
Oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
For surely its radiance and light glow and spread forth there too, more strongly, in fact, than they spread forth and glow in the space of the universe. Being close to its source, the light is more intense, but there within the sun, its very existence is nullified within that of its source. It is as though the light were absolutely non-existent. All that is seen within the sun is the sun itself, not the light, which is merely a product, an offshoot of the sun.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at. I say the Shema, and I'm with God, and I'm happy about it. Open my eyes, nothing's changed, right? This is just like rays of the sun within the sun, and I'm still as close to God as before I came into a body. When I have my eyes closed, I'm meditating. Whatever situation I'm in, learn to keep reinforcing like a habit or like a craftsman that it's all just rays of the sun within the sun. It's all just words hidden within my potential for intellect. It's just non-existent. And God is as close as within myself and right around me. וכך ממש דרך משל הוא ביטול העולם מלאו במציאות לגבי מקורו שהוא אור אינסוף ברוך הוא כמו שנתבאר שם באריכות.
Exactly so, figuratively speaking, is the very existence of the world and everything in it nullified in relation to its source, which is the light of the Ein Sof, as it is explained there in length.
Yes, I think that's clear. And now the point is not to just read it in a book for anyone watching and say, oh, isn't that a cool thought? But to really start to insert that into my mind such that it shapes how I process intellectually, how I perceive, how I assign value, how I make meaning. And that will change my emotions, and that will change my whole thought, speech, and action. And will certainly allow me to do all the things we've been learning to do about functioning at a high level, being a Bainani, overcoming obstacles, and really giving the most to those around us. So now he goes to a different point.
Cantor, how does the animal soul versus the godly soul work into all of this?
Well, it's an interesting, I'm good. It's an interesting point because, to raise Joey's observation, I can be happy that I'm serving God and doing mitzvahs and learning Torah and understand the unity that happens in Torah and the unity that happens with mitzvahs. And that's great. But that is only while I'm doing the mitzvah or while I'm learning the Torah. So it's limited in time. It's not constant. And B, as you brought up, it's only the divine soul that's elevated. Primarily, it's the divine soul that is united with God. It's the divine soul that wants to do mitzvahs. The animal soul is just, it's being refined, but it's going along with the divine soul. This meditation actually involves the animal soul too. Because as I meditate, I recognize my ego, my body, my animal soul, it's all part of this. It's all nullified as well. And so now it's not just my abstract divine soul that is being elevated and enjoying the Torah mitzvahs. My animal soul is as much a part of it and is interacting with God when I'm using a computer or having breakfast or going for a walk to exercise my body. And so this meditation actually brings joy to the animal soul as well and is really holistic. Yeah? Any thoughts on that? You're smiling. You're not, usually you have a problem with my points. Today you're smiling at it. Nice, 2 thumbs up, good. So now we're moving to, the first point was how to create this constant, intense joy for the divine and the animal soul, that the world is nullified, we're always with God. And now he ups the ante, says, and by the way, this is not just a good way to make your day more happy or be more effective. This is actually the whole purpose of why you're here, why you're created. And not just that, but the whole purpose of why the world was created was for you to learn to perceive with this faith that the world is not here, it's all just me. Right? Like a game of hide and seek, right? When a kid hides, it's so that you find them, and the joy of, the excitement of when you're being found. So same thing here. God created a world that hides God's presence. And the whole point of creating the whole world was for us to now learn to look at it with this kind of faith. And that brings a second joy, which is not just I'm happy that I'm close to God, but I'm also happy that I'm actually fulfilling the purpose of why I was created, and spectacularly the purpose of why the whole world was created. All these, the sky, the earth, the trees, the mountain, also that I would look at it and say, it's God, I should be happy. Yeah, so if you really internalize that and you recognize you're now, that's it. This is the climax of the movie. You're about to snip the red cord and stop the bomb from blowing everything up. This is the purpose of why your whole story was there, and you're right there and you do it and you save the world. It's that same emotional rush of recognizing that you're living a life with deep purpose. That was a shallow example, but you get what I mean. והנה, כשיעמיק בזה הרבה ישמח ליבו ותגל נפשו אף גילת ורנן בכל לב ונפש ומאוד באמונה זו.
Now, when one contemplates deeply and at length on this matter of God's true unity, his heart will rejoice with this faith. His soul will be gladdened by it to the point of rejoicing and singing with all his heart, soul, and might.
Now, I don't know if, we have all these posters of like Hasidic people dancing and singing. And it's like, it's a caricature, right? Oh, they're Hasidic, they're dancing and singing. Of course, that's what Hasidim do, right? And it's quaint and it's nice. But think about what it means to get yourself to a point where you're so happy that on a regular basis, you just dance and sing. But just in normal life, you would, and I have to say, learning with people in the Hasidic community in particular, there's this one guy, and I often, when I describe him, Rick, you've been there. I think you met him, right? Remember you were in Jerusalem at a minyan with me when they were reading Torah? Never came with that? You came to the minyan in Jerusalem, though. You went there with Goodman Locks, right? Did they read Torah that morning?
No, they did not read Torah.
Okay.
But they were happy.
It was 6:01 in the morning. They were happy, right? There's a guy there that reads Torah, and he's like one of my favorite people in the world, and I've said 3 words to him. But literally every time I see him, it's like he has 2 kids that just got married, and he won $10 million in the lottery. Like he's got a smile on his face, like the most amazing thing just happened and is still happening. And I've seen him now, I don't know, probably a dozen times at different mornings in Jerusalem where I can get away to this early minyan. And just without fail, every time I see him, he's so happy. I'm like, what's going on? What party am I missing, right? He radiates it. And other people I know that, just normal times when you'd be sitting there neutral, they're singing and dancing, right? So it's something special to generate a joy that will cause so much happiness that you'll want to sing and dance anytime, all the time. And that's this chapter, right? That when you see, especially Chabad Hasidim that have that just joy that radiates, that drives them, it's because they've internalized this, maybe even from being a young child, that we're close to God all the time. And by seeing that, I'm actually fulfilling the whole purpose of my being. And then, yeah, your heart exalts and you want to sing and you want to dance. It lifts you up. And isn't that, what would be the advantage of living life where that was my default status, right? What would be the advantage of that being just, I wake up, I start thinking, I start focusing on my meditations, And now for the rest of the day, my default status is, oh, I want to sing and dance. This is so great, right? Look at what I'm doing. So it's not a caricature. The caricature comes from a very profound philosophical, emotional work that's being done. And it's this. Ki rabahi, kihi kirvat elokim mamash.
For this faith is tremendous. When it fills one's mind, it actually constitutes an experience of the closeness of God.
Yes, we all maybe have had times when we've been seeking. We've all met figures who are seeking, and you get the sense that they're looking and they're seeking, and they're having tremendous spiritual experiences, and they're, everything that comes along with that, whether it's strange antisocial behavior or seclusion or kind of strange self-limiting practices, whatever it might be. Here you're saying it's just a state of mind. Internalize this, have this be the slide through which you are seeing the world. And now automatically you get this tremendous faith that fills you with tremendous joy, that is palpable, that drives your behaviors. And that, by the way, makes you much more effective in overcoming personal obstacles, societal obstacles, helping people, having energy to get up and change someone's car in the middle, car tire in the middle of the night. Whatever you need, if you got this joy driving it, that bursts through any barriers inside yourself or around you. So you can be a much more effective soul as you're flowing through this gift of a body. Isn't that great? I love these chapters. Yeah? Yes, Ellen.
Would that interfere with something like your parent died? How do you rectify that?
Yeah, so we can go to those big questions like, what about when bad things happen to good people? What about when there's a tragedy and I'm feeling grief? And we're not talking about how to explain this. There's a difference between my emotional state because of my life and my surroundings, which will have its ups and downs, right? So even if I'm going deep into this, and this is my thought process, look, if I get a paper cut, it hurts. And if a loved one is ill, that's very painful. And if a parent dies, that's devastating. And I still feel that. The question is, how do I respond to the devastation that I'm feeling? So no one's saying that the biggest chassid and the biggest tzaddik, when they lose a loved one, that they don't grieve. They're upset, they cry, they're in pain, of course. The difference is, how are they responding to that pain? Are they creating an extra layer of saying, oh, poor me, why did it happen? I don't understand it, they didn't deserve it, and all the stress that goes along with that? Or when they feel the same pain you and I feel, do they say, Baruch Dan Hamet, blessed is the true judge. I don't understand why this happened, but I'm going to still generate meaning around it, and maybe have a little bit less grief, maybe come out of mourning sooner, maybe be able to get back to being a functional person in society, a little more smoothly. I don't know, maybe not. But no, it doesn't erase the grief of tragedy. It doesn't explain why bad things happen to good people and the opposite. But it keeps me from getting bogged down in that psychologically, so that I add my own story to that of, oh, now I can't be happy anymore, ever, right? Make sense? Yes, Joey.
It really is explained in when we say Kaddish for the dead. It's all exalting God. It never mentions death.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our texts, a lot of our traditions really do emulate this, embody this, and focus on this. And we can kind of skim over them and say, oh, that's weird. The Kaddish is just praising God. Shouldn't I be saying, at least thank you for the person's life, and please ease my pain? Like, if I were to write a prayer to say for mourners, I'd include that stuff, right? And tradition just said, no, praise God. Great is God, great is God, great is God. Boom, boom, boom. Right? So I'm feeling inner emotional pain, maybe very, very deep pain that will never vanish. But my conscious reaction to it is, it's all God. It's all God. Do I understand it? No. But faith is above understanding. I can have faith that it's God, even though I can't explain why that phenomenon happened, that tragedy happened. Tremendous. V'zeh kol hadam v'tachlit briyato uvriat Kol halamot elinim b'tachtonim. Who's reading? Is it Paula? I forgot where we were. Yeah? Yeah, Paula, if you can go ahead. This, in fact.
This, in fact, is the whole purpose of man and the purpose for which he and all the worlds, both upper and lower, were created.
Right, and for us Reformed Jews, of course, it's women and it's children and it's everybody, you know, just this old language. But it goes beyond just this is my purpose. That's why the entire world was created. When I do it, I'm fulfilling the purpose of the whole world. The whole world is filled with a new light. And not just the world I see, but the spiritual worlds we've described in past classes, the much, much more expansive spiritual worlds that are filled with all kinds of divine light and angels of all sorts. Those worlds were also created just so you and I would recognize that it's all nullified, it's all God. And when we do it, we refine and we bring to their conclusion and to their purpose all those spiritual worlds as well. We really are this amazing lever in creation where the whole world is resting on us. And when we assume this perception through meditation and let it affect our thought, speech, and action, now the whole world clicks and the whole world is filled with joy and light and meaning. So if that doesn't get you excited and happy, right? Maybe go back to the chapters 432 and go through the Timtum Halev stuff, right? Because I get so I love these chapters, and the next one, all the next like 5 chapters are so great. And now we focus in on our relationship with God and all this. Liot lo dira zo.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Liot lo dira zo betachtonim kmo shitbaer lekaman barichut. Eleanor, if you are you able to read for us? Do you want to unmute and read?
I believe this is where you are, that God should have such a dwelling place here below, as will be explained further at length, how this earthly abode for God is the purpose of all creation.
And so another, very good, that's it. Another big concept that God should have a dira batachtonim, a dwelling place here in the lowest world. Right, so God created, the heavens and Atzilus, and this emanated world that's full of God's light, with all kinds of angels and souls of tzaddikim, although the souls weren't created, but they're there. Then the world of Bria, then the world of Yetzirah, finally the world of Asiya, where there's so little light. It's just this dark place where God's light is so hidden, but it's still a spiritual world. And at the bottom of that is this dark, nasty place where there's all these beings that don't even know God exists, and they can do horrible things to each other that are against why God created it. And it's just full of the sort of filth and residue of the world. It's the kitchen garbage can when you forgot to put the garbage out in the middle of the summer for a week, right? And you open it up and it's like, and yet it's there that God wants to have a home, a dwelling place to hang out and enjoy. And that's the whole reason why all these beautiful spiritual worlds were created, not so God could dwell there, but so God could come right down to the bottom here and have a dwelling place here in this world. And that depends on who? On you and me, by doing exactly this. Because if you think about it, the one place in the world where God's creative force is hidden is our awareness. Every animal knows it's supposed to be an animal, has an instinct. It doesn't have a conscious awareness that God created it, but it doesn't block it out. It knows what it is, right? It can't do the wrong thing. Every stone is being 100% a stone, just like God created it. It's me, when I decide I'm going to lie or steal or whatever, or yell at someone, it's me that's saying, you know what? Never mind God, I'm going to do what I want. And I can block out God's presence such that I don't even think I'm being created right now. That's the only place in the created reality that God's presence is gone. And when we do this, when we bring God's reality back into our perception, that creates a home here in the lowest world. And then God says, right, thank you for preparing my chair. I'm going to sit down here. Let's talk. Let's chat. This is exactly what I had in mind. Thank you. And so how happy does that make me that I've done this fulfilling the purpose of the world, and not only that, but I've created a home where God's going to come into this world and enjoy the as we'll see, enjoy that I made that choice or you made that choice. There's layers upon layers to give us added joy in this chapter. It's really it's a powerful chapter in the Tanya.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Of course, Eleanor.
My mind is swirling because in the beginning of the chapter, you talked about we don't exist, the earth doesn't exist, and now you're saying God has come down and we exist. Where am I lost?
Yeah, it's a paradox, isn't it? That's a good question. It's a good point. And we're actually being hypocritical, aren't we? Yeah. So this is non-existent world, and yet God wants to come here and have a home here. So yeah, I mean, that paradox you can't get away from, and it's a good point.
Okay.
It's a good point. But it comes down to, there's our perspective and there's God's perspective, right? So like I think Dan asked at the beginning, so if this is a figment of God's imagination, what does that mean? Is the world's not real? Well, okay, if that's true, can I now go and just murder someone and take their money because he's not real, right? Can I just live my life doing whatever I want because it's not real? What does it matter? And Judaism and Kabbalah says, no, it's a figment of an infinite being's imagination. And when an infinite being imagines something, it's actually reality to us. So it is real. So there's a benefit in our perspective of thinking the world is real, even though to God it's non-existent. And then God can come down and have a home in our perspective, so to speak. Because even though we're not real, there's a different light when God's presence is revealed in our perspective and we recognize that it's not real. And that's the home that God wants to have a dwelling place in our consciousness as expressed in the physical world, not our consciousness as our divine soul elevates up and has oneness. I'm not sure if that was a good answer. It's a bit circuitous, but do you get what I mean?
Can I ask him, how can, that's anthropomorphize, I can't say the word, God, it's giving him characteristics that we've just been saying he doesn't have. So how does he become a person who needs a home?
Yeah, of course. So anytime we say this, when we say, God's right arm, or we say God's intellect, or God speaks, we want to be very careful. And the Tanya does emphasize several times not to say that we understand anything about God, or that God has an arm, or that God has a brain and thinks, but that they've given the Kabbalists permission to speak in the way that our ear understands and to use human metaphors to express something that is 100% abstract and infinite. So, of course, we're not saying there's some physical phenomenon that comes down and actually has a physical home in the physical world. It's a metaphor, meaning that we include God, and now God that was already here, because the world didn't exist, the world exists within God. God that was already here is now fully revealed even from our physical perspective. That's what it means for God to have a home in the world, not that God wasn't there already, or that God is a body. So Cindy, and then back to Eleanor.
If you read the note that follows the next piece of Hebrew, it explains how man's faith and unity of God fulfills the goal of a dwelling place.
You're talking about the
the little note on 447.
Yeah.
Right underneath that top piece of Hebrew.
Yeah. When God's unity is revealed in the mind and heart of men, the world becomes an abode for God, right? And God is revealed there just as one reveals themselves completely in their own home. So our faith lets God be completely revealed here in our own personal world, our perceptions. Just like in my home, I'm completely honest, I'm completely revealed, I'm not putting on a public face. Same thing when we with our faith recognize God. Now God, that's a nice emotional gloss there that they put. Yeah, Eleanor, let's beautiful. Let's wrap this up, Eleanor, with your last.
Okay, I was just going to say the way you just explained it made it click for me. That was all. So
Good.
That's what that was about.
Good. And now I recognize there's a real danger in this chapter, because there's the beginning and the end, they kind of are the middle. They actually, you got to address that. Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful. I'm glad. So now we're going to zoom in on that, and we're going to have another metaphor from life. And as Paula said, of course, no one's saying God is a king living in a palace somewhere, but here we can relate to. I can relate to, you know, the mayor of Detroit living in a mansion, or the governor living in a mansion, and they have power and they're kind of far away. So a metaphor to get us to really be able to internalize this. והנה כמה גדולה שמחת ההדיוט ושפל אנשים בהתקרבותו למלך בשר ודם המתאכסן ודר איתו עמו בביתו. Are we at Sue Ellen?
How great is the joy of the common and lowly person when he is brought close to God, to a king of flesh and blood, who furthermore lodges and greater still dwells together with him, not in the king's palace, but in his own commoner's home.
Right. So pick your political leader. What's the name of our congresswoman that came to Temple Israel when we had a vigil? I'm forgetting her name, or Debbie Stabenow. Pick your political figure. If they came to Temple Israel to a service, we'd all be excited and happy. Imagine if they came to my own house, right? Some great political figure, some world leader, right? Imagine if the Prime Minister of Canada came in, you know what, Michael, I'm going to stop by your house and sleep over. Is it okay? I've got an official visit, and the news will be there, and we'll chat about politics and we'll play chess. I'd be like, wow, Trudeau is coming to my house. That's amazing. Like how happy a normal person like me would be if a world leader decided to come and just stay at their house and visit and get to know me and hang out and spend time with me, right? I think we'd all be kind of tickled at that, right? And that's just, he's another person, right? He's like me, he has faults, is limited, is gonna die, goes to the bathroom, he's just another person, and yet I'm excited that they would come and spend time with me. B'kal v'chomer le'inketz l'kirvat v'dirat melech malchei malchim hakadosh baruch hu. Yes.
How much more, infinitely more, ought one to rejoice in the nearness of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, and in His dwelling together with man in this physical world, man's home.
Right, and let's go back to Susan. I think Susan's going to read next, but thank you. So, if that were the case with Justin Trudeau, or name your world leader, imagine the ruler of the universe, the King of Kings, God, right? The infinite being that's the only one that exists, coming, as it were, and wanting to spend time in my consciousness, in my life, in my world, in my actions and thought and speech, to say, thank you, Michael, for finally recognizing me and letting me in, and now I can be here and be fully revealed. I'm not just here for myself. You also know I'm here, and now that's what I wanted, right? Not just that God, God allows me to have some kind of God, but that God was actually waiting for it. My whole life waiting for this moment for me to sit and meditate and pray, and finally God's like, you opened the door. Thank you, Michael. I've been waiting. You're so unique. You're so special to me. You're so important. I invested so much in you. And now finally I can have time to sit and get to know you and be revealed in your world. I mean, how could that not fill me with joy even beyond what I can contain, right? Because this is beyond anything in the world. Susan?
So it is written, for who is the man who dares to approach me, says God.
Yeah, and so the Alter Rebbe points out that, this is in Yirmiyahu, this is God, right? You would approach me? You think you can even take one step towards my being and my palace and my thoughts and my righteousness and my infinite and my infinity? You would dare think you could approach me? Like, that's also true. The greatest Jewish prophet who ever lived, Moshe, was told, take your shoes off. What are you doing? It's just the ground you're walking on is holy, right? And this is Moshe. And I think I can approach God. And yet, that God is waiting to come and have a home in my consciousness if I just meditate on it and change my awareness and recognize it. Right? So again, just breathless excitement. You know, I could sing and dance now, but dancing on Zoom is not as fun. How are we doing for time? 5 minutes? Yeah, I think let's pick up here next time. Let's do a little meditation. I think it's a good spot. So we're finishing at the 12th of Adar for this ability, Velzeh Tiknu. And let's definitely take a moment to lock this in and anchor this in our meditative practice. And if you are with us on Facebook, or if you're with us in the future, please join with us and know that you know, there's no distance when it comes to meditation. There's no time when it comes to meditation, and our focus can come together even if you're not physically with us. It all happens above space and time. So please join us wherever you are, and just find yourself in a natural, neutral position. With perhaps let your spine lengthen if it's been crunched a little. Let your neck lengthen. Relax your feet on the ground. Nothing to grip there. Let your weight fall into your chair. And let this river of breath that is flowing through us come to a nice, still, slow, vast flow. Perhaps relax the muscles on your face so your forehead is smooth, eyelids are smooth. And as your breath lengthens and deepens, we will acknowledge the 4 stages of breath. Together, let's breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Let that fill you for 2, 3, 4. Release the breath out. 2, 3, 4. And stay there. 2, 3, 4. Continue the cycle, breathing in. Stay together. Releasing out. Stay there together. As you continue, as you breathe in, your belly can expand, your diaphragm spreading out downwards. And then as you breathe out, your belly pulling back in, your diaphragm rising back up. Breathing like a calm, happy, safe baby. And as we continue this breath, let's open up our wisdom gateway. That is the space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. Can be our wisdom gateway in this technique. It's good to see that gateway, to visualize it. I like to put a mezuzah on it, your call. In our wisdom gateway, let's put this meditation. The whole world, every experience, including my own self, is all nullified before God, before the Ein Sof, before the source. Like a ray of the sun within the body of the sun, has no more reality than that. And let that visual meditation fill your mind. Any distracting thoughts, just return your mind to the meditation and let the meditation fill that corner of your mind. Like wine filling a cup till your mind is full, every crevice, every detail, every connection in your brain focusing on it. And just track any emotions that result from this focus. Knowing that we're so near to the Creator, we're one with the Creator, just like before creation was even spoken into existence. We're that close. And if you're watching on a device, feel free to pause and stay in this meditative stance for a minute or 5 or 10 or 20. If you're here with us, let's wiggle our fingers and toes, let our breathing return to normal. But today, as we open our eyes, let's recognize that there's no difference. Eyes closed, eyes open. The world that we're looking at is all God, all nullified, just like a ray within the sun. And perhaps if each of us takes that through the week, whether you're here in our Zoom or you're on Facebook or YouTube, take that awareness and that joy through the week, it can really emanate and uplift those around us. And as a community, we can dance and sing through the week in a whole different way. Thanks to the Alter Rebbe.